Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Two Blondes and a Printer. I am one of your hosts, Anna Hockett, and I'm here with my co-host, Katelin Shanks. This is a Rackame sponsored podcast where we talk about everything from customer communications, print, mail, business strategy, innovation, career development, and of course, the sexy side of print. So, Katelin, who is our who's our host? Who is our guest today?
She could probably be the host. No, well, we're so excited to have Pat McGrew join us. She's a communication technology evangelist whose deep industry knowledge and perpetual love of learning and analysis has really led to an incredible resume, including co-authoring 8 industry books, speaking at events all across the world, hosting, contributing content to industry knowledge hubs. The list goes on. She's also the managing director of the McGrew Group. If you haven't heard about it, she uses all of her incredible technical and marketing experience to really lead the industry towards optimized business processes and production workflows, helping companies create their 5-year plans. The list goes on and on. Pat, you are a force to be reckoned with in this industry, and we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It keeps me from getting bored, right? So part of it is that when you've been doing this stuff as long as I have, and I'm old, so, for the last 35, 40 years, I've been playing in print and outbound communication, and you pick up a lot of skills along the way. Like I ran a company for 10 years. I was the CEO. So you pick up a lot of business skills and negotiation skills and sales skills. And then I have, worked in market research, and you pick up all those skills. And then I worked in trying to keep people from returning multi-million-dollar presses, and you learn a lot of skills that way. And so over the years, you just pick up all these skills. And at this point in my life, the way I make a living is by leveraging whichever set of skills the person I'm trying to work with actually needs at that moment in time. Works out great.
I don't know where you find the time, Pat, for all you're doing. Like when we were just talking about our travel schedules coming up, you guys, just so you guys know, Pat's like, well, I gotta be in Switzerland, and then I gotta be in Puerto Rico, and then I gotta be here, and then I gotta be here. And that's just like 2 weeks of the next, 3 months. So I'm very inspired by your energy and by of course your wealth of knowledge. And I think Katelin and I would both agree that when you agreed to be on the podcast, we're like, oh, this is a big deal. And we're so excited to talk to you more about all the things that you can help us with, or help everyone that likes to tune in with, or just even ideas.
Mm-hmm. I travel to learn, right? So if somebody's willing to pay me to come speak, I'm there. The answer is always yes. And if I get invited to an analyst briefing, the answer is absolutely yes, because I learn. And when printers need help, and we have an opportunity to go on site and do assessments, whether it's a printer or it's a multi-channel delivery environment or it's a vendor who's looking for help, again, I learn from all those adventures too. So I get to leverage all of that. And traveling is what keeps me sane in a lot of ways. It keeps, no day is ever the same. Hunkler Innovation Day is coming up in February. End of February is, the Switzerland is always a learning experience, because that's like Mecca. And then association meetings are always learning experiences. And whether it's, a US based organization, or it's one in Italy, or it's one in Denmark or Germany or wherever I'm going, you just learn different things. And then when you go to other places, you get to bring their knowledge to a new market. Right. And mm-hmm. So for an awful lot of years, I practiced VDP in Australia, because there was a market there that profiled very much like the UK or Brazil, or in a lot of ways like the US, like a lot of Western Europe, but it's a smaller market. So we could try things there to see if they would work. And when they did, then we had these really great case studies. Wow. And we always had really great numbers, because God bless them, the Australian printers were willing to share and help us tell the story to create a bigger market, right? So when you have that opportunity to practice, it's great too.
That's awesome. I love it. And that's brilliant, as far as, using a smaller test market that's
Yeah.
still, that's independent enough on their own. So as long as we're, talking about what you're learning in your travels and in your career, Katelin and I love talking about, and everyone, it seems like, if you go on LinkedIn or if you go on any news outlet, is talking about AI, right? And
Yeah.
in our business, it's both AI, machine learning, and a robotics component, because we're dealing with both hardware as well as software. So let's just kind of dive into like how that conversation has changed, or what that looks like these days versus in the past.
So if you think about robotics in the print industry, just makes sense, right? It always made sense. It was just that it was really, really expensive. It's hard for an average printer to, a mid-tier printer to say, I'm going to drop $200,000 on a robot that's going to carry a roll of paper from my warehouse to my press, right? I mean, that's a really hard nut to crack. Even though technically it's efficient from a use of money point of view,
Mhm.
because it's going to live for a lot of years. It's not going to take coffee breaks. It's not going to care about working third shift. It's not going to ask for overtime, right? Once you buy it, and you're maintaining it, I mean, it is a good sunk investment, but coming up with that investment can be really hard.
Right.
And so a lot of you only saw a lot of the robotic arms and the paper movers and a lot of the other pieces, the AMRs. You only saw them in shops that were really high revenue shops and had money to invest, had a way to get there. The thing that changed over the last 8 years is that the cost of the components to build these robots has come really, really way down.
Okay.
They've micro components, micro engines, higher powered engines, engines capable of lifting heavier weights but still with very small footprints. They've gone from needing, lines painted on the floor to guide them, to actually being programmable via GPS inside the building. They can be taught to avoid things instead of you having to avoid them, which was a big issue, in the early days of robotics. The programming of these things has gotten so much easier. Now it's mostly like drag and drop interface or trace on a map, and it does it, versus you having to sit there and type code in, right? So just the ease of use of bringing them into an environment has changed. The cost has changed. So where does AI come into this? Well, one of the other big things that happened in robotics is that through a combination of machine learning and inquiry-based programming, like a generative pre-trained transformer GPT type of technology, they can be taught faster and they can be taught more flexibly. It means that an AMR that you're teaching to know where the presses are and where the warehouse is and where the finishing equipment is and where they need to move things to, can actually be taught how to make decisions. Oh, gee, I moved the paper here, but I really don't have any place to be for the next 20 minutes. I'll go charge myself, right? That
Wow.
there's those kinds of things that they can be taught to do, and they can be taught to map a floor, right? A lot of them now are smart enough to have cameras on them, so they can actually do pattern matching to concrete floors, so they know where they are. So if a pallet gets dropped in the middle of an aisle, which does happen during busy seasons, they don't just stop dead and go, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do." They can actually figure out how to navigate around it based on knowing where they need to go and knowing what floor area is open to them, right? So that's where we did a bit of a leap from machine learning, which is mostly data driven with some programming applied, with
Okay.
some, if then else programming applied, to being able to flexibly navigate print floors and to learn as you bring a new piece of equipment in, as you have to maybe move where equipment is. It doesn't require weeks and months of programming to solve for that now, because with some very simple techniques and very simple user interfaces, the AI based technology can be taught, can help the machine learn where it needs to be and what it needs to do. All of
Mhm.
that you would think would maybe make everything more expensive, But in fact, it actually doesn't. In fact, what happens is that because this technology, a lot of it is available through open source interfaces. So vendors aren't having to license massive libraries at very high costs, which means they're not incurring costs. So the cost that they can provide it to people for is less. And again, because the cost of manufacturing the robots has come way down, whether it's a robotic arm that no longer needs to be programmed for every inch of its movement, right? Which we used to have to do, go out 1 inch, go down 1 inch, go out a millimeter, go down a millimeter. Now it can be said, start here, end here, you get there, right? So
Wow.
when things become that much simpler, they become more user friendly and the price comes down. So today, if you've got, between $5,000 and $15,000 to invest, depending on what kind of robotics you're looking for, whether you're looking for a motion arm, you're looking for a robotic cobot to, put envelopes into a mail thing, like the Pitney Bowes Automate is an example of that.
Okay.
Or you're looking for, like what HP was showing with their Movigo automated mobile robot, right? They were showing at Drupa. Depending on what you're looking for, and you can find price points that'll probably work for you. But then you have to have the conversation internally about the cost and what the benefit you get is. And you should be having that conversation about any AI you're thinking about.
Really,
Any
any
AI.
business investment should always be tied back to that.
I would say,
Because even if you download a free AI tool, it's not free, right? Just we all got to be clear on that.
Info and
People using it, right, and getting it set up and getting it taught, like there's resource there. So one of the things you want to think about is what the ROI conversation you want to have about robotic arms, something like an Automate, something like a Movigo, something like a paper moving robot. There's lots of those that you can buy. There are a lot of companies that will happily sell them to you. I know we're going to Hunkler. Hunkler will have robots there, which will be kind of cool and fun, right? They had them there in 2016. Or rather in 20, what are we? So 5, 4, 3. They had them there in 23. And then we had them there in 17. We had the robots that were picking up finished print and taking to the finishing partners, right? And then taking finished goods back to the vendors so that they could use them as print samples. So that this technology has been with us for a while. It's just that part of it was people didn't do their due diligence to learn whether it was cost effective or not. They just assumed it was going to be too expensive and they just avoided the conversation, or they didn't do the ROI calculations based on what benefit it would really bring to their business. Think about it. If you can free up somebody from moving stuff and stuffing mail trays, that's a burdened element of your overall cost of goods sold that can be redirected to an actually valuable activity, right? You can train them up. You can help them gain new skills and become more valuable to the business.
of course,
Instead of worrying about workers' comp claims, right? Because the other thing that robotics helps with is that, and should be part of your calculation, is you take a look at your workers' comp claims. Print shops have them, right? People pull their back because they're lifting wrong. They do something. They drop something on their foot. They drop a die on their foot, right? And one of the coolest demos I saw at Drupa was this really lovely Yamagawa AMR that was built for Kama, where it was dual purpose. It was actually moving dies that were used on their die cutting device. These things weigh 60 pounds. So imagine you're a person and you're moving it, right? So you drop it, bad things happen in so many ways, right? And people get hurt moving them. So it was taught to get them off a rack based on a QR code and a run list for the day, right? and bring it to the press. So take the old one off, move it to the rack, grab the new one, move it over to the press so that it could do the die cutting. And then it was also taught, when it wasn't doing that, to be keeping an eye on the stacker at the end for all the die cut goods. And as the stacker filled up, to grab and move them to a table.
That's awesome.
Right? And think about a person doing that and the odds that at some point they're going to get hurt because that die weighs 60 pounds. Right? And so those are the ways that the combination of AI and flexible AI, the flexibility AI can bring you, mapped into cameras, mapped into, so this had a camera watching the stacker, right? Mm-hmm. So watching that and using the AI to say, oh, well, it's about here, so I should grab it right before the next sheet comes. And having all that programming, that's the power of robotics and AI together. And that's where you need to do an ROI calculation to figure out, what does it buy you to take that person out of the way and actually use them somewhere else? And remember, the robot's not burdened. The only burden the robot carries is power and maintenance.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's good fun.
It really is. And so it's interesting, though, talking about ROIs, because we kind of live and breathe and die by that when we're, selling our software. And it's always been interesting, even in my career, how many times clients either don't mention an ROI unless I'm the one who's kind of driving it forward, or maybe it's just not something they're thinking about. Like, how do we shift that sort of mental paradigm so that's the first thing that they're thinking about?
It's hard.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing, Katelin. That's the hardest hurdle to get over. It's not that the technology is not available, because it, you're selling it, right? And we do, when we do assessments, we have the same conversation. It's like, okay, yes, an assessment costs this much money, but we're very confident that once we walk through this assessment with you, you're going to find a lot of low-hanging fruit, that you're going to be able to tune your processes to become more efficient. We're going to be able to recommend perhaps having conversations with your existing vendors about adding modules or getting new training so you're using what you have better. We're going to be able to recommend maybe an additional tool that would help you, or an integration program that would help you become more efficient. So whatever you pay me, you're going to make that back. No questions asked. But on top of that, by working with your vendors, your existing vendors and any new vendors you bring in, and then keeping that conversation up, right? The one thing I always say to people, and maybe you have this conversation too, if you don't sign up for the quarterly business review, you're making a mistake.
Huge mistake.
Because even though you're going, oh my God, I'm going to sit and, it's going to be a sales pitch for my quarterly business. I'm going to listen to this quarterly business review. It's going to be a sales pitch for an hour. Actually, the best ones are not. The best quarterly business reviews are what I know you guys do. You go in, you sit down, you say, hey, let us take a look at what you're doing. Let's see how you're using the software. Oops, wait a minute. We were watching you do something that's not the most efficient way. Did you know this would allow you to do this more efficiently? Allow you to gain some time back in your processes? It would allow you to be more efficient in what you're creating and sending out the door, would allow you to do all these things that you can do. And if somebody won't let you help them do that, you don't want to say they wasted money buying your product, but they're not getting the highest ROI out of it.
No, absolutely. And I think the best strategic account, the quarterly business reviews that I've ever had, I'm the one probably doing the least amount of talking. I'll ask a probing question here and there to guide the conversation. But then if the client is telling me what their process looks like and how their day-to-day looks and what's changed and what's coming up, perfect, because then I can actually bring some advice to the heaven. Oh my goodness.
It's nirvana when you have a customer who will actually be open and honest with you. The ones that are always painful are the ones where it's not going well for them. And it's really not your software's fault or your hardware's fault, depending on who you are in the mix. But because they won't be honest with you about the things they're struggling with, they want everything to sound rosy.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the people that it's just painful. And you kind of want to slap them, but you can't.
And I just think, the more you can be honest with your vendors, the more you're going to get out of those relationships and out of the investment, and more quickly realize that ROI, even if you didn't calculate it when you bought it.
Oh, we both sat through painful ones where like maybe something isn't working the way that it should, but then guess what happens? Those people are the ones that are going to stick with you for a long time. If you listen, you hear, and then you fix it, or you work with them. And that was going to be my next point, is like I think, Kayla, you use this word, like a Sherpa. We want to like guide them down the right path rather than like tell them what they need to do. It's like, because we're not on the print floor. We're not held to the same goals and standards that they are as far as running their business and growing their business. But we know how to help guide them. And that's where I think that's a huge point that we've talked about with you, Pat, as far as this using AI, using I would say even any new tool or software or AI or whatever on the market is you gotta walk before you run, and you gotta, partner with someone that's gonna guide you instead of just telling you, hey, this is gonna work and we're gonna leave you alone.
Right? Be smart. Learn how to use the tool, right? So yeah, you can open the free version of ChatGPT, or you can use Gemini or Copilot if it comes in your environment, right? Your Google Workspace or your Microsoft Teams environment. Yes, you can. However, if all you do is use it the same way you use a typical search engine, tell me all about, right? Why doesn't this work? Like, it's really not going to be an effective tool for you. Right. This is where I tell people, if you want to play in AI, if you want to become smart about how to use AI for your personal business benefit and for your business benefit, right? Because there's two tracks there. Learn how to use it. There are so many free classes. I mean, LinkedIn probably has 100 of them where, and you might say, oh, I don't want a vendor's class. I don't want a vendor's AI. Yeah, you do. Because it's to their benefit to help you be as effective as possible. Whether you settle on their cloud AI solution or you settle on their data analytics solution, they all have the same basic understanding, right? If they actually have a product in the marketplace, they've got some smart people working in that environment, and they've already learned how to use and manipulate using AI. So listening to the guidance that they give is really, really valuable. So one of the things that we started following, some of the people that we started following have adopted sort of acronym-based tips, right? So one of them you'll hear is Rappel. Think about the Rappel method of writing a prompt. Because the engine, when you just say, tell me all about the print industry, it's going to, it's got the whole large language model of the internet to look at. There's a lot of content, right? I mean, it's like, where to even start? So it's going to look, and the first like 3 or 4 things it hits on, it's going to make a decision and it's going to plop it back at you, right? And that's probably not exactly what you're looking for. So Rappel, the idea is to create a role for the AI engine to use. Who are you, right? So in my role as a print industry consultant, so now that's my role. So now I've asked it to be a print industry consultant. So I've asked it to ignore effectively all the low entry level stuff, right? And so I'm a print industry analyst, so I want you to be a print industry analyst. So then you want to set up the environment, right? What's the atmosphere that I'm trying to create here? So in my role as a print industry analyst, creating a series of blogs to talk about the role of AI in the print industry. So now I've set my atmosphere. Now I want to start doing prompts and follow-ups. So tell me what the top 20 print industry uses of AI are, or tell me what the top 10 are, whatever. And then when it tells you that, now follow up with that prompt, right? So you're going to prompt again and say, okay, so I saw some things here. So now I want to dig deeper on some of the information. And then you need to be smart. You're the human in the room, right? you need to evaluate what it's telling you, because the very sad truth is that AI hallucinates. We don't like to think of it that way, but it does. So we've tested it. So Ryan and I, Ryan McAbee, who I work with, works with me at McGrew Group. We test AI all the time. We throw stuff. We've got a whole set of engines that we throw things against. We'll throw the same queries against multiple engines, and then sit with our eyes wide open, going, "Oh my God, they don't have a clue." And so you've got to evaluate whether what's coming back is even reasonable. So just to test it. So as you mentioned, I've written a number of books, and I've written parts of other people's books, and I write a lot of articles and a lot of blogs, and I ghostwrite for people as well, right? So we ghostwrite for folks who they wanted to go out under their product development manager's name or their CEO's name. I mean, we're happy to do that. We're really good at being flexible and voicing. So just as a test, we asked a whole bunch of the engines to talk about the use of hypertext and other techniques in mainframe-based publishing. So if you think about a lot of the healthcare, insurance, broker-dealer, financial services industry, in the 80s and 90s, how we published was off mainframe, right? That's how we generated statements. It's how we generated letters. It's how we generated even a lot of the direct mail, solicitation mail came off of mainframes. And we had all sorts of tools. We had, the original Extreme tools. We had the original GMC, PrintNet T, what became Quadient tools. We had what were the Zix, Espresso, Xerox-based tools. We had some workstation-based tools like Intran. We had Lightrod. We had all sorts of tools out there. We had, Aluvru kind of wandered in. Then the workstation-based tools came in. But a lot of the generation was still being done off of mainframes. So we might create a template, but then we uploaded it to a mainframe, and then it merged data, and bingo, we had variable data. So we asked that question. So I'm the human in the room, and here's what I know. One of my books is called In-House Publishing in a Mainframe Environment. Right?
Okay.
Never came up in any of it. So what it came back with was that basically what it was describing was how composition happens today. It never actually referred to large language models, mainframes, which are still heavily in use. For anybody who's unaware, they're still, the mainframes are out there and they're in use every day. If you're living with output from an Epic system, there's a mainframe in the middle of that. Watson, right? IBM Watson is mainframe. Just so we're real clear on that. And in fact, the clouds are mainframes. We just don't call them that anymore. We call them clouds. They sound fluffy. They sound friendlier, but they're mainframes. Right?
Right.
And mainframes come in a lot of flavors and sizes and shapes. But the computing power of a network, it can be the equivalent of what we used to think of as mainframes. But there are a lot of mainframes out there. But fundamentally, it didn't have a clue. What came back. Now, it's not that somebody on the internet doesn't know what a mainframe is. It's that it found some sources to talk about how to compose things and decided, oh, well, this is how you do it. And never referred back to it. So I expected, because I asked for citations, and I kept expecting to find the book because I know the book is out there. It was published by Macmillan, right? It wasn't like I didn't publish it, myself. It was done by Macmillan. And then there was a follow-up book that was online text and other techniques that was published by McGraw-Hill that we wrote. And that didn't get referenced either.
But nothing popped
Nothing.
up.
And nothing.
Like, I wrote the damn book on this. Why isn't it popping up?
Nothing from the VM handbook, and not even anything from all the articles that we published at the time. So in the 90s, we were writing for Printing Impressions and anybody who asked, pretty much. Document Strategy Magazine, all those people. So those articles were all out there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only references it brought back were things to nothing that was older than say, 2015. And so what you
Mhm.
have to realize is that there are limitations to what an AI engine can help you with. It doesn't, you want to believe that the internet has the whole history, but in the printing industry, that's not true, right? In the printing industry, and the way especially we operate in enterprise class printing and enterprise multi-channel communication, and we've been doing multi-channel communication for a long time now, right? For basically a quarter of the century, we've been doing
Wow, that's
multi-channel communication. If you started to think about it in time frame terms, we've been doing it a long time. You would have expected that our inquiries of all the assorted engines, and we were looking at some open AI ones. We were looking at Anthropic. We were looking at some of the combo engines that use a lot of engines under the covers. And we weren't getting back anything that I would have said passed the research accuracy test.
okay.
Then you want to have a lot of fun, go ask one of the engines about your company. And I encourage every printer to do this.
That's a good point.
Go ask, and whether you're a printer or you're an e-delivery specialist or you're a marketing services specialist, go ask. Don't ask one, ask several about your company. One of the things we found is that very often it comes back with companies with similar names that are not you.
So I think that's a huge takeaway on this whole conversation, as far as like, if everybody wants to use it, they really don't know where to start. That's a great place to start, is just like
Yeah.
kind of start dabbling. Would you agree with that, Pat?
Oh, absolutely. Dabble, dabble, dabble. So that's what we started doing years ago. As
Okay.
the first AI tools that Ryan and I have been writing about Industry 4.0 and Society 5.0 in Japan for a decade. And so we kept waiting for it to kind of really become more part of the daily talk track. And it took a while. And what really spurred it was OpenAI with ChatGPT, right? And actually making it easy to use the tools. But we've been using other tools that we borrowed or got access to from some of the vendors, tools that were being used internally for machine programming and for data analytics on digital front ends, and things like Phoenix for doing AI-based imposition. Things like Perfect Pattern for doing AI-based imposition. We've been playing with these things for a long time from a tool perspective. So as ChatGPT entered the talk track, and then Gemini and Copilot and all the other bits and pieces,
Oh,
and Claude and now Boodlebox and Perplexity and all the other ones. And as more of the tools that we use every day have had AI embedded in them, Grammarly has a really great AI model, right? That we test it a lot. We stress it. We do. I mean, even LinkedIn will try to tell you that it has AI.
yeah.
I want to know how they're programming it. But at the end of the day, we've been playing with it for a long time, and it's why we're always suspicious of it. It's also why I can tell if you fired your marketing department and had AI started creating all your marketing material. I can tell it in a shot,
Hmm.
because there are speech patterns in AI that are recognizable by engine. I can tell if it comes off Claude. I can tell if it comes off Perplexity. I can tell if it comes out of Grammarly, because there are, it's how they're programmed,
Uh-huh.
and the programming has a personality. And
Wow.
so we were working with a very, very large software company last year, and we were trying to help them get some pieces ready ahead of Drupa. And so the agreement we had with them is that they were going to create a bunch of content with their knowledge experts, right? Their subject matter experts. Then they were going to ship it over to us to take a look at. And then they said, well, wait a minute, we're going to have our marketing department take a look at it first, and then you can just make some touch up edits, right? Well, however you want to do this, you're paying me the same either way. So the CMO got all the stuff, sent them to the marketing department, which she knew was now only two people. And it had been eight or nine, but they had let a lot of people go. I mean, some of it was COVID, but then some of it was making a proactive decision that they could get by with a smaller staff because they would just have AI do the work, right? So they sent us this directory full of stuff to take a look at it. I read the first 3 and I pinged her back and I said, so this looks like it's Chat GPT, and let me tell you how I know. And then I kind of bullet pointed what the issues were. And she went, okay. They didn't tell me that they were using it. I thought they might be. Thank you for the confirmation. Can you just fix it? Because we got Drupa. I mean, yep, we fixed it. So I mean, it's great to get ideas.
100%.
Every writer I know right now will tell you, I mean, brainstorming, Grammarly will help you with it. All the engines, like, hey, I have this idea and I want to write about this and I'm looking for ideas for how to do this. And it's great for that stuff. Mm-hmm. But never, ever, ever take something that was generated by an engine and post it on LinkedIn.
No.
Right? Or submit it to a trade magazine as an article, because we've seen that too.
Or put in the responses to an RFP. I've seen that.
My God. Oh my God. Yeah. And I actually was actually talking to a client the other day on Monday or Tuesday, and we were talking about a problem that they're having with RFPs being rejected at a higher rate than they've ever seen before. And I said, okay, well, you know why that is, right? And he said, tell me. And I said, because last year we worked with your team on how they were responding to RFPs, and we told them that they couldn't do that. And it would appear that they still are, because you're not winning it, because a bot recognizes a bot. So what do we know about RFPs? The first step of every RFP inbound is that a bot goes through it, right? People are not reading RFPs beginning to end, right? So what happens is it comes in and it goes through a process, and you buy a tool, right? There's all sorts of products you can buy. You bring them in, or it's a subscription service, or it's a product that you can buy that does the initial review and the summarization, and it's using AI, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a bot. But when a bot's reading something a bot wrote, you don't rate well. And they score, right? They score the response. So if you don't actually respond to the question in the RFP, you instead put some canned stuff in there, which, is happening a lot, then you're probably getting kicked out in step 1 and never even making it to a human reviewing your response. So then when that happens enough and you start to see your response rates, your win rates impacted, you ought to be asking yourself some questions and not just saying, oh, well, they just didn't understand us, or they clearly didn't need what we have to offer. I mean, that's probably not the right answer. And yet we've had clients tell us, oh no, that can't be correct. That's no, our people are really fine. They have really good relationships with all these companies. And I said, I don't care what relationship you have with the company. This is 2025 or 2024. And the relationships are great when something goes wrong, but they're not going to help you win business. Not today, not on a consistent enough basis. So this is another place that AI is good and bad, right?
Absolutely. So that all goes back to the point of, getting with people that, first of all, dipping your toe in, and then getting with folks that can lead you down a path and help you create your own path. And Pat, we could probably turn this into a 3-part series. I know we're kind of coming up on time here. Yeah. So I have to ask you, before we go here, what would you say the sexy side of print is, other than us 3 blondes right here, which we already can see?
So to me, the sexiest side of print is the creativity that goes into it. And so the thing is that that's not just a wide format poster story or an embellished greeting card story or a pretty, a cool DM story or a cool packaging story. It's a transaction story too. It's a communication story at the end of the day. And the people who find that, their statements are boring or their DM is boring, you need to find new creative people to be talking to, because the creativity that goes into even basic business communication is what has always won my heart. It's why I do print sample TV, because I find stuff in the wild, or people send me stuff. I've got people well trained after 8 or 9 years. So people will get something in the mail and they'll send me a picture and say, hey, you want this? Right. And I actually had a friend send me her entire cruise packet because of all the print and all the different kinds of print and the different creativity that went into menus versus tags and cards and, the guidebooks and things. I mean, just the creativity that goes into it is just killer to me. There's a magazine in Italy called Print Lovers Magazine. And I write a piece called Application Showcase for it. And we talk a lot about those sexy pieces of print. So no matter what it is, if it's in print, it has the opportunity to be sexy. And that's the thing we need to remember. But we also need to remember that our e-communication, our emails, our mobile communication, it has that equal opportunity to be sexy. And we're not doing ourselves any favors if we're not spending time on the creative design for mobile content delivery. And that's a place where I see a lot of poor execution. Right.
Absolutely.
I get a ping that says, hey, my bill is ready. Or I get an email that says my bill is ready. And it's like, there's no creativity to it whatsoever. And then you're going to make me click 4 times to get to it. And then what you're going to show me is not actually the same quality of creativity as what I would get in the mail. And which is why I get all of my enterprise communication, both online and in the mail, because I'm constantly comparing them. I still can't figure out why e-delivered bills don't have to have a Schumer box on them when every paper bill has to.
I love it. And honestly, I think that's just such a good way to end it. I mean, just your love of learning is so inspiring. And I think everyone out there, be it a QBR, be it going to a conference, ask questions, keep learning. That's the only way we're going to keep moving forward, right? So to wrap it up, we always end with the cheers. So if you want to have a drink with us and chat everything print, then connect with us on LinkedIn or email us at twoblondesandaprinter@gmail.com. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye.